In ecology, a plant community is simply a group of species that really like to live together, just like us. And because Tenerife is a very special place, also the plant community here around us is very special. Most of the plants are only growing here on that place, on these islands, and nowhere else in the world. That's what we call endemic plants, so they are endemic to or endemites of the Canary Islands. We will take a closer look at some important examples of these endemites later. But first, let's have a few words about why there are so many endemic species here on the island. To understand that, we first have to know that Tenerife is a volcanic island. So it emerged out of the sea. It was never directly connected to the mainland. So the plants never had a chance to invade the islands in a conventional way. Only occasionally, maybe sticking to some feathers of seabirds or to the bark of driftwood, some seeds, a few seeds only, made their way to the island and found themselves in an environment where literally nothing else grows. So in this environment, their only competition comes from themselves. Now, every species, no matter if plants or animals, has its own very special way of making a living. And we call this their ecological niche. The ecological niche is not the place where a species is living. It is more like its profession. So if there are two species at the same place, which have very different ecological niches, they can live together without competing with each other. But competition with other species was not the problem of these first newcomers on the Canary Islands. There were no other plants. The only competitors were their conspecific neighbors growing just besides them. And to avoid this intraspecific competition, some plants made changes in their lifestyle, or in other words, they conquered a new ecological niche. Growing on a practically empty island, all the available and possible ecological niches were still free. So it was very, very easy for them to build up a lot of new species within a short time. But because these new species had the same difficulties of reaching the mainland than their ancestor had to reach the islands, those new species simply stayed where they were and became Canarian endemites. The dominant genus here in this society is the genus Euphoria. The genus comprises a number of species which are really closely related. And so it is mainly 3 species of Euphoria which form the vast majority of all the plants here in the desert. And the most important and most dominant of all of them is Euphoria balsamifera, and which is also called the sweet tabaiba or tabaiba dulce. Like all the euphorbias, also the sweet tabaiba contains some white and sticky milk. But unless most of its other species, the milk of Euphoria balsamifera is not poisonous. Instead, it has been used widely like a glue, for example, because it gets also very hard when you heat it. And it is even said that humans' first chewing gum comes from the tabaiba dulce. Next to it, you see Euphoria lamarcki. Euphoria lamarcki is closely related. It needs a little bit more water, so if you can distinguish those two and you walk through the desert, you can see where it's worthwhile to dig for water. But the milk of Euphoria lamarcki is much more dangerous than balsamifera. In fact, it is a poison for the nerves, and in former times people even used that milk for fishing. Because if you drip some of the milk in the water, the fish get dizzy and lazy, don't like to move anymore, and they can be simply collected by hand and taken out of the water. The third one now is Euphoria canariensis. As you can see, it is completely different from the two before, so you cannot see the close relationship from the first look. But if you take a closer look at the flowers, you will see they have all the same structure, they are all very similar, and so they are put together in one genus. Euphoria canariensis never has any leaves at all. It grows like a cactus, and it can stay long periods without any water, growing on the sheer rocks, getting some rain 2 or 3 times per year, and the other time they are in a kind of standby mode. They do not do much of a metabolism, they just sleep until it's raining again. To survive the dry season here in the desert, most of the plants share their leaves, like Euphoria balsamifera and Lamarcki, or do not even have leaves, like this Euphoria canariensis. But the trunks and the other outer structures you will see throughout the year. Some other endemic plants here have another strategy. They live under the ground, and most of the year you don't see anything of it. One example for this would be Scilla hemorrhoidalis. This plant only grows during the rainy season, gets some leaves, gets some flowers, gets some seeds, and before 2 months are over, the plant is gone again. And what remains in the ground is a big bulb, like an onion, which keeps water and nutrients and whatever they need until next year. This beautiful fellow here is a lavender. And over the time, also the lavender made this evolutionary step and built its own species. So this one is called Lavandula canariensis. Lavandula canariensis has no specific strategy of surviving the summer. They simply dry down. But it leaves a carpet of seeds, which start to grow when it's raining the next time, have a pretty fast growth, make a lot of flowers, and then dry down again after the seeds have fallen off. The last endemic species I want to show you is Plocama pendula. Plocama pendula belongs to a completely different family, has nothing to do with Euphorbia. In fact, it is a relative of our coffee. Even if it looks like a coniferous tree, it isn't. And this one stays green throughout the year, even in the dry season, no matter how it does it. So even if they live at very dry and exposed places, they still have such a good water management inside that they can afford to have green leaves throughout the whole year. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little journey into the desert and take a look at the endemic plants of the island. And maybe if you like, you can just visit us and take a look by yourself.